is it a Pet Sematary video?
Louis. That's rude.
Just not on camera, sorry. Gideon has also seen this movie and it terrified him.
So, Gideon, I'm filming. There is no area in my apartment right now that... Yes, sir. I'm not filming this for the 17th time. Excuse you. Give me 1 second. The cats are doing something they're not supposed to.
No. I'm sorry, Tabitha. Hey y'all, and welcome back to Joey's Booked. In this video, we are going to be continuing on reading our Stephen King books in publication order. We are going to be reading this month's Stephen King read, which is Pet Sematary. And this is one that I had been really excited to get into. I had seen the movie adaptation of this King book before I even had a copy of it. Since I usually thrift a lot of my Kings, because I usually look for like first editions and things like that. Because this one is so popular, I did have a hard time finding it. This is obviously not a first edition copy. Now, I will say, a little foreshadowing, I had some qualms with this one. It wasn't as great as everyone else said, but I didn't dislike it either. So, with all of that said, let's go ahead and jump back to when I started reading.
Alright, so I've finally finished the first part of Pet Sematary, and I'm liking it a decent bit so far. I've just been kind of chipping away, like, every 20-ish pages here and there. I've been really busy with work and getting the school year started. As far as this story goes, we are following Louis and Rachel and their 2 children, Ellie and Gage, and they have moved to a new house. Up the hill from their house, there is this kind of creepy pet cemetery that's supposedly on the edge of the property or in their property. I'm not really sure if it's a part of it or not. But it's kind of like said to have been maintained by the local children. And they're taken up there by this elderly man across the road named Judd, who we get information on him and his wife. And Louis starts to kind of see Judd as this fatherly figure. We just kind of start seeing how these relationships develop. Because of this trip up to the pet cemetery, the 8-year-old daughter, Ellie, has started to have these weird nightmares, and especially about their cat, Church, who she is scared now is going to die, and she's starting to have her first experience this. So far, I'm liking it a decent bit. It's not my favorite thing from King, but it's not necessarily that it's bad. I completely think this is one of probably the best things I think he's written, but it's more that I'm not fully in the mood for what this is at this moment. This just happened to be my next book in order, and I've just not been feeling super heavy topics and heavy conversations, because when I'm really stressed out, those don't always work for me the same way they do at other times. Also, Ellie, I think she's 8. I know I've said that like 12 times, but Ellie is also written very strangely. Sometimes she speaks like a small child, and then sometimes she speaks like she's much older than she is. The conversations that Louis is having with Ellie are often just like way too adult of a way to explain things to an 8-year-old. He's like going in all of this detail on death and stuff, and I'm just like, that kid ain't got a clue what you're saying. As far as like the characterization though, I do think that it is exploring grief in a bunch of different ways. And then kind of as it gets going, there's this situation with Church where, spoiler alert for a quick second, the cat does die. Church dies and Louis buries him, and he kind of comes back, and that kind of starts this whole thing with the pet cemetery, because that's where he's buried at. I think that there has been some great foreshadowing here in the second half. I'm not fully shocked by much, because it's pretty straightforward, even though I have seen like film adaptations of this. It is pretty straightforward. So at this point, a lot has happened, but also not very much has happened at all. I'm hoping we get some more plot device with the cemetery and stuff as we kind of continue forward. So I'm not sure when I'm going to be able to have the chance to finish this out and update next. I'm not sure when I'm going to be able to kind of finish this out, but I'm going to go ahead and pick it back up, start part 2, and if I have time to update before the end, I will. If not, you may just be getting my final thoughts.
So I didn't decide to update for a little bit, and it's been a few days since I have finished it, but I am finally done with Pet Sematary. And I think I'm going to be giving this about a 3.5 star. It's the same as it was before whenever I updated. I just don't think it's the right time for me to really be picking this up. Normally I'm really into some grief horror and a lot of these grief conversations, but there was a lot of existentialism in that beginning, and it just really ruined it for me going forward, which is kind of sad because this is such a renowned and well-known book from King. It just drug on so badly for me. And by the time the parts that I should have been enjoying started to happen, I was just kind of checked out. So I'm not sure where I even updated last, but creepy stuff I think had started to kind of happen, and it just really takes this whole turn in where it's going, even though it's kind of expected once there is a specific character death, which I don't want to put any spoilers in there. And there were just a lot of plot lines at the end that I almost felt like were kind of dropped. There's such a ambiguous ending for Ellie and how she's there, she's a huge part, and then she just disappears for the rest of the book. Gage's story just did not come to a close until way too late into the book for me. I really wanted more from that section because I thought that whole story arc was a lot more of what this book was going to be about, and it wasn't, and it didn't work for me in the ways that I really wanted it to. So sadly, I'm not going to be able to give a lot of big updates on this just because my thoughts haven't changed. I would recommend this out. I do think if I ever was to reread it, that I think I might enjoy it more. I just think it was way too much existentialism in the front half. The pacing was really, really, really off for me. And then just everything felt way too rushed at the end, and there were a few plot holes that I just wanted more answers for. I will say, though, the way that it ended in the epilogue, that part worked amazingly for me. That last ending page or two in the epilogue, absolutely fantastic. That would have been the perfect kind of ending that I would normally love. Sadly, just too many other parts of the book, it didn't really work the greatest for me. And with that, that is another Stephen King publication order vlog done. And sadly, these last few, they just have not been working for me as well as his works usually do. So hopefully here soon, we are going to be able to jump into the next one. I think the next one is going to be The Eyes of the Dragon, which I'm not very familiar with. I think it might be more of a fantasy for King. But regardless, if you've made it this far into the video, thank you. And go ahead and leave a cat emoji down at the bottom, because we'll leave it for church. And just thank you for continuing to tune in. If you haven't yet, please go ahead and like and subscribe in the video, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye.